Hey everyone, welcome to Dangerous Werewolf. Are you brave enough to step into the perilous world of werewolves with me? Here, we'll uncover the secrets, face the fears, and explore the thrilling and dangerous aspects of these mythical creatures. So hold on tight and let's start this wild adventure together. Chapter 21. Joe stood in front of me as he held onto the pads. I continued punching the pads like there was no tomorrow, releasing all my stress towards it. Joe just stood there like a statue, letting me punch the pads repeatedly for the past hours. Whoa, Eve, you still can continue after 2 hours. He breathed out, panting as he put down the pads for a short break. I looked up, my eyes gleaming ferociously as I tried to calm myself down. Come on, you're so fast tired already. I retorted back with a raised brow, twisting my head to the side as I stretched my stiff neck. Looking at how tired Joe was to keep up with me, I sighed. Fine. You can go back first. I will continue myself. You sure? I will take over. Joe, go back. A low voice startled me as I turned around to see Nathan by the side. Joe turned to look at me with a knowing look and turned around to leave. He picked up the pads from the ground and held onto it steadily, positioning them in front of me. Go on, babe, he urged, keeping his eyes fixated on me as I resumed punching. Each time I punched, I let out a sound in frustration. My brows were creased as I concentrated on the pads. I thought of how I have to stay by Nathan's side, to become his strong support. I thought of how I would no longer have my freedom, to focus on bringing up our pups. I let out a loud cry in anger and sent the pads flying off his hands. That was one huge blow I had inflicted. Tearing off the bandages, I walked to the side and picked up my bottled water as I finished every drop. I panted furiously as I leaned against the cooling wall, closing my eyes. Babe. I snapped my eyes open upon hearing his voice, staring at the figure in front of me warily. He skimmed his thumb across my cheek, his eyes focusing on me. Is there something bothering you? He questioned with worry laced in his voice. I shook my head, mustering a small smile as I turned around to leave. He caught up with my pace as he walked alongside me in silence. I walked past my room and headed straight to the place where I first reunited with him the moment he came back from his alpha's training. How time flies. I remembered how I first stood here screaming his name with hatred laced in my voice. I remembered how much I hated him when I first discovered we were mates. But all that ended when he tried his hardest to win over my heart. And he eventually captured my heart. However, things were not going to be easy from now on. I have seen how the Luna struggled to raise her pups and support the alpha with the pack at the same time. And I feared that the same thing would happen to me. I remembered the first day I came back from alpha's training. I chased you all the way here. You were so mad about the fact that we were mates. Now look at where we are now. He suddenly said, wrapping his arms around my waist as my back faced him. A tear slid down my cheek. If only we could just stay as normal mates and live a simple life. There was a crack in my voice as I whispered softly. His arms around my waist tightened upon hearing my words. Is this the reason why you have been committing suicide? I shook my head, more tears sliding down my cheeks. I didn't. Submerging in the water gave me the peace I needed to think. Ever since I accepted this whole mates thing, I have never been happy because I know I have a huge responsibility awaiting me. Babe, is my alpha title the reason why you have been so pressured lately? He asked softly, caressing my shoulder blade lightly with his nose. The Luna title is something that many she-wolves can never possess in their lives. I know I must have done a really huge good deed in my past life to deserve this title. But I know that there is a price to pay for this. The responsibility to bring up our pups and to support you as you run the pack. There was a minute of silence before he responded. I know it's not going to be easy and I don't intend to stay in this alpha position for long. My eyes widened as I spun around immediately. What did you mean by that? A newfound hope flashed across my eyes as I anticipated his explanation. He wiped away my tears with his thumb gently, smiling down at me. I also have the same fear. To see you struggling like my mom when she was young. You don't deserve to be tied down by the responsibilities, and I don't wish to see my future son going through what I have went through as well. But I have a dream that I had since young. I wanted to get rid of all the rogues and bring peace to our pack. To do so, I would have to take this alpha title and slowly remove them from this world. Otherwise, our pack would always be in danger. I understand. I smiled sadly, knowing that my hope had just been diminished. Even though he didn't want to see me going through what the Luna had went through, I had no choice since he wanted to fulfill his dream. But for the sake of you, I don't mind leaving everything behind once I've settled everything here. I plan to let your brother take over my position, and once I make sure he is doing well, I will take your hand and travel around the world with you. Really? My face lit up upon his words. He nodded, making me jump as I wrapped my legs around his waist with my arms dangling around his neck loosely. I leaned in and pecked his lips. He chuckled deeply, holding me close to him until realization hit him. Have you bathed? Chapter 22. Chapter 22. With the intentions to bathe on my own, we ended up debating whether he should join the bath as well. Of course, since I wanted to put off the mating ritual, I was against him bathing with me. God knows what he will do to me once he allows his wolf to take control fully. And it's going to be difficult to keep his pervert side from touching my body. From what I heard from Piper, his wolf was a huge pervert. So there was no way I was going to let him share water with me. Since he was the alpha's son, his bathroom was so much bigger than mine. Why squeeze with me in my old room? Come on, babe. He tried his hardest to convince me as I stood on my ground and kept shaking my head. Would you rather lose to me or lose me? I retorted back with a question that I knew very well that will end this meaningless debate. He sighed, hanging his head in defeat when he knew that he will never win me. I tipped his defiant jaws to face me, gently pecking his lips. Now be a good boy and go back to your room and bathe. I will come and find you in a while. No, change into something nice because we are going out. I will come and fetch you instead, he said, giving me a wink. I smiled, shrugging my shoulders. I will see you in 15 skanks. I may be a girl, but I don't have the habit or routine to apply any sort of makeup on my face. I usually took care of my skincare products and was ready to go. However, this time, I decided to apply a thin coat of light pink lip gloss on my lips. Yes, I may not have any makeup on my table, but Rachel had left this lip gloss behind, saying that I would use it when the time comes. I don't really believe that I was able to use this lip gloss since I don't wear makeup, but for the sake of looking good in front of Nathan tonight, I don't mind. Well, Rachel was right this time. I should thank her the next time I see her in the pack house. I looked at myself in the mirror, staring at the reflection of myself. Behind me, a figure stood when I realized it was Nathan. I spun around to face him, noticing a ghostly smile on his lips. Wow. He breathed out, taking in the sight of me. I smiled, flattening down my dress as I did a smooth turn. How do I look? I asked, biting the inside of my cheeks in nervousness. You look beautiful. Babes kanks. The moment we reached the beach, I began walking on foot with my sandals hanging in between my fingers. He walked beside me within 20 fingers, leading me towards the direction of a small shelter. As we reached near the shelter, I noticed that there was a huge sofa inside a large heart shape filled with rose petals. I also noticed a small working refrigerator at the back. In front of the sofa was a blank screen on the projector. I took in the sight in front of me, couldn't help but to smile. I don't know what to say. Nathan. This is so beautiful. I turned to look at him as his smile grew widely. Though it took me the whole morning to set this up, but the priceless smile on your face is worth the effort. He whispered, leaning in as he pecked my lips. He smiled, pulling me into the huge heart. I sat down on the sofa as I waited for him to join me. He returned with a bowl of popcorns while I stared at it in astonishment. How did the popcorns manage to stay warm? He simply chuckled. Below the fridge is a heater. This is an invention from your brother's human friend. I was so amazed by the work of a human. I knew humans were intelligent species, but they were way intelligent than I thought. So, how about a movie in front of the screen? He suggested, dipping his fingers into the bowl as he ate the popcorns. I laughed at the sight, nodding. He popped in the disc and played. The longest ride. Very soon, we began to immerse ourselves in the intriguing movie while our fingers moved to grab some popcorns from the bowl. Halfway through the movie, I noticed that his hand was tugging on mine. I turned around to see him leaning in as he claimed my lips. Without intentions to resist the kiss, I responded to it and leaned in for more. His tongue traced the bottom of my lips before tangling with my tongue. I wrapped my arms around his neck as I immersed myself in the kiss. Slowly, our pants filled the place as we pulled apart. It was at this time when I turned to see the leads panting as well. Filled with surprise, I turned back to face him. "Did you time this?" I asked, noticing him smirking with mischief. "Nathan, Chapter 23, Chapter 23. He grinned cheekily at me when I screamed his name. But he dropped the grin and let it turn into a genuine smile. For a moment, his actions made me consider if he was actually bipolar. His thumb trailed across my cheek, taking in the side of my face. "You are so beautiful. Whether you are asleep, angry or full of laughter, you are still so beautiful. Because of your intoxicating smiles and laughter, you have slowly crept your way into my heart, occupying the position that only belongs to you. I love you, babe." I stared into his warm orbs, slowly digesting his words. "As much as it sounds touching, are you going to keep confessing to me all over again?" He chuckled huskily. "Doesn't matter how long it takes. I will still continue my confessions until you get sick of hearing them. Are you deliberately trying to make my life harder for me? Or is this a speech of you wanting to spend the rest of your life with me?" I questioned, knowing the obvious, but I still want to hear the answer from him. He smiled. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, babe. I'm going to make sure that you don't leave me. If you put a cuff on my wrists, perhaps I will consider." I teased with mischief, anticipating how he's going to do that in the future. The only way I could think of now was having babies, but I'm not going to let him have his way that easily. If he wants it, he has to make an effort to get it. "Gosh, you're still playing hard to get at this crucial moment." Piper groaned in annoyance, giving me her own eye roll. He pondered for a moment, before a sly smile crept to his lips. He wrapped his arms around my waist and flipped us over such that I was under him. "Nathan." I groaned aloud, taken aback by his sudden move. He smirked, pecking my lips. "If I mark you, will that put a cuff on your wrist?" My heart skipped a beat at his words. Marking me. At this moment, Piper was yipping in glee. If he marks me, I will have his scent on me. Once I mark him back, our scent will be in sync and other unmated wolves will stay away from us. But it also meant that he was making me his openly. After the mark, I will have to go through the heat unless we mate before it comes. I groaned aloud in disbelief. He chuckled, pinning my wrists above my head, watching me with a warm smile. "I won't mark you, unless you give me the green sign. I promise you this, babe." Even though all the thoughts in my head were currently bothering me, but I knew deep down in my heart, this was what I truly wanted. I want him to be the only man to mark me and make me his. Likewise, I want to see my mark on him as well, giving a warning to other foolish brats out there to stay away from my man. I closed my eyes, silently giving him the green sign. He took it as his cue to continue, and claimed my lips. He gently sucked my upper lips, his warm breath blowing against my face. I sucked on his bottom lips, engrossing myself in this heated kiss. He pulled away briefly. His warm orbs turned pitch black, which meant that his wolf, Noah, had taken over. My beautiful mate. I could feel Piper trying to take over, but I pushed her back since we had to complete this marking process. Who knows, once I let this phrase spree-tide wolf free, she will take over and end up mating with her mate. Not going to let that happen. You are so evil, Eve, she huffed. I was about to respond to her when I felt his wolf kissing his way down my neck, searching for my soft spot. When he noticed me moaning, he seemed to have decided to mark that spot. He continued leaving kisses on that spot, while I felt his canines enlarged as he sunk them into my skin. I whimpered slightly at the pain, feeling his hand gently graze across my hair to calm me down. Slowly, the pain turned into pleasure. He licked off the blood and kissed on the spot once more. Replaced with my blood was now a mark that he had left on my body. Now was my turn. Once I left my mark, it meant that we belonged to each other officially. This time, I allowed Piper to take over with a condition that she only leaves a mark and nothing else. She agreed with a sigh before taking over. I felt myself being transported to another dimension, watching myself from another perspective. I watched as she turned him over, lying down on his body instead. With that, she began teasing her own mate. I can't help but to laugh at the sight. Even though she had promised me to put off the mating ritual, but she still has something up in her sleeves. I shook my head at her character, wondering how on earth was I paired with her as lifetime buddies. My eyes widened at her next move. She had unbuttoned one of his buttons and kissed her way down to his chest. Piper, I warned, hoping that she knows what she's doing. I know where my limits are. Just let me have some fun, will you? I rolled my eyes in response, not bothering to give a reply. I was speechless at how naughty she can go. I bet when the mating ritual comes, she will definitely let it all out. Nathan just have to know that it won't my fault that I can't control my naughty wolf. Finally, she found the spot and left kisses on it. Her canines enlarged, sinking into the spot, blood oozing out from the skin. I could hear a wince coming from Nathan, his face in frowns again. I sighed. I wish I could do something about his goddamn frowns. It has been there since forever. Piper licked up the blood and kissed on the spot, looking down at our mate lovingly. They kissed. The sparks ignited even stronger. We were now done with the marking process. Very soon I will go into heat unless I agree to allow Nathan to mate me. Before Piper let me take over, she spoke aloud. I will see you again. Handsome. I rolled my eyes and groaned, feeling myself taking over gradually. I stared at Nathan under me, blushing furiously as I noticed the mark on his neck. My thumb traced across my mark on him, noticing that it was a shape of a Celtic crescent moon. Before I could say a word, I felt a little sleepy and dizzy. I felt a kiss on my forehead as he tightened his arms around my waist with a smile. Good night, babe. And with that, I felt myself dozing off with a smile on my lips. Chapter 24. Chapter 24. Waking up the next morning, I examined the mark carefully in front of the mirror. I smiled absentmindedly, tracing the details of the Celtic moon mark. It was breathtaking. Arms wrapped itself around my waist without warning, my eyes meeting the familiar orbs who possessed my mark on his neck at this moment. Gosh, I wonder what would our parents say when they saw. My dad would be nodding approvingly at what we have done, and my mom would probably gush over the goddamn mark. Perhaps it was time for me to settle down, knowing that freedom away from this pack would arrive soon. I leaned against my mate, smiling at him through the reflection. "What made you smile so happily, babe?" he asked, hugging my figure tightly. My smile widened. "I'm looking forward to our future after you have handled the rogues." His smile instantly dropped. It was as though he was deep in thoughts. "What's wrong, Nathan? You know you can always tell me when you have troubles." He sighed. "Last night, apparently, there were news from my scouts. The mole in our pack was a small, petite figure who was behind the rogues' invasion. Currently, we have 3 dead members who were murdered by them. A girl," I gasped in shock. "Who would have the audacity to communicate with the rogues and help them to attack our pack? It seems like the only clue we have. The rogues also left a bloody note on the bodies." He closed his eyes briefly as he tried to process the words on the note. "Be sure to last through the night of your ceremony," he whispered. When he opened his eyes, they had turned pitch black. He must be furious at the thought that the rogues were hoping he won't live through that night. Which meant one thing: they were after him. But why would they be so dumb to leave a note to warn him? Unless they were using it as a distraction to get something else precious to him. Usually, it would be the mate. In this case, was it me that they wanted? Seems like it. He suddenly said. It was as though he had read my thoughts. My face scrunched up into a frown. "Were you listening to my thoughts?" He chuckled. "You didn't close the link, babe." I groaned aloud. He kissed my mark, sending tingles down my spine. I love how his kisses affects me so badly. "So what now?" I asked, my mind filled with thoughts about the rogues' possible invasion. "We will just have to continue the ceremony. Do you have a plan in mind?" He smiled. "Leave it to me to handle. Babe, for now, focus on becoming the Luna of the pack." Immediately, I groaned kinks. I sat on the desk next to him, my mind currently occupied by the laptop in front of me. His desk was long enough to fit a person, so it means that I was sharing the desk with him. His side of the desk was filled with endless papers and folders piled at one side, while mine only has my laptop on it ever since I was done with high school a few months ago. "Click on the email I sent to you. It's a schedule on what you have to do in my office every week," he pointed out, disrupting me from entering data onto the document. "Damn, this sucks. I am supposed to enjoy my holidays. You know," I groaned aloud, whining like a 4-year-old. He chuckled huskily, leaning in as he pecked my forehead. "I'm sorry, babe. Bear with it until I'm done contributing to this pack. By then, I will take your hands and travel around the world with you." I smiled, contented to hear that. Suddenly, I felt so blessed that I'm paired with you, minus our past. He laughed aloud. "You should start looking forward to our future. Think about the number of pups you are going to bear for me. Don't get me started on that. I'm not forming a football team for you." I pouted, shaking my head at the mere thought. Gosh, imagine that. Little Nathans and Eve running around the house. All right. We will have to. A mini Nathan and a mini Eve. That's disastrous. It will be like a cat and a dog fighting. I commented with a playful eye roll. He pinched my cheeks and laughed. "So fast thinking about that. What do you think?" He pulled me into his arms and smirked. "Does that mean we are going to mate soon?" My instant reaction was a look of pure shock. "Don't even think about it. Nathan." Gosh, he had the audacity to start the topic. My cheeks would be turning a darker shade of beetroot in less than a minute. The thought of it was too steamy. I shivered, pushing him away and going back to where I had stopped just now. "Is someone blushing right now?" he asked the obvious. I turned towards him and glared at him sharply. Immediately, he took it as a cue to shut his gap and went back to his paperwork. I can't help but to notice a triumph smirk on his face. I rolled my eyes in disbelief's kinks. I have been complaining ever since the day he sent me the goddamn schedule. It was full of endless work. Mondays to Wednesdays, I am stuck in the office doing data entry, processing the claims from the respective injured wolves, and even managing the finance of the pack. Thursdays, I would have to meet the members who were injured in the hospital thanks to the frequent rogues' attacks and visit the orphanage where the orphans lived in. The orphans were the most pitiful kids in the world. Their parents were either killed by the rogues, committed crimes, or ran away from home. On Fridays, it would be considered the less stressing day of the week, as I would be walking around the pack grounds with Nathan to direct at the members and make sure their welfare were taken care of. As much as I hated getting involved in pack business, it has become a routine for me in less than 2 weeks. I was slowly adjusting to this Luna job, and I learned about what Nathan had been so preoccupied with all the time. There was so much work. Damn, it wasn't easy being an alpha. I had to take my hat off him for being a hardworking alpha, which gets him respected by the pack members at the same time. Yet, as the ceremony is approaching, I can't help but to have an unsettling feeling about it. I was constantly worrying and thinking about it. It wasn't the pack's safety I was afraid of, seeing as how Nathan has done a great job making sure that they went through the emergency drill practices. It was the fear of losing him. Chapter 25. It was girls' night today, and we were having a sleepover at Jessica's house. However, Rachel couldn't make it, so it was just the 3 of us spending the night. Maya was painting her fingernails while Jessica was munching away on her chips. I laid down on the bed like a puppy inside, brows creased in worry. "What's making you sigh for the nth time?" Jessica asked with her mouth full of chips. "Is it because of the recent rogue attacks?" Maya asked, not looking up from painting her nails. "How did you know?" I asked in alarm. "Oh, Rachel told me." She sounded so calm when she talked about it, though, which was weird when her brother was injured in the process of catching those rogues. "Yeah, and during the night when it happened, she wasn't in at home," Jessica added with a shrug. That hit me instantly. Snall, petite figure who helped the rogues to get past the security. "How did you know she wasn't home?" "Jessica," I asked. "I was supposed to pass her back the dress I borrowed from her last week, but she wasn't home when I visited that night." "Gosh, I can't believe I was out in the night when the rogues attacked." Jessica replied with eyes wide. "Oh my gosh, that was so scary. What if the rogues attacked you?" Maya told her off like how a sister would, making Jessica pout instead. I stared at the wall opposite me with eyes wide. Why did she do that? I know I should be telling all of these clues to Nathan, but Rachel is my best friend. I have to know the reason behind her helping those rogues. Maybe she was threatened or forced to do it. I will have to follow her to find out kinks. I hid myself behind the bushes, waiting for Rachel to come out of her house. I needed answers before I let Nathan know. The only thing that worries me is she is doing all of these willingly. That would be the worst betrayal. Boots hit the grass as a petite figure came out of the house. "Rachel." She looked around her surroundings and walked towards the forests. I followed closely behind her, careful not to let my cover blow. She kept walking and managed to get past the security. It was the changing shift hour. She must have been able to get past the security that night during this hour as well. Bright as ever. "Rachel." I walked and walked, finding myself away from the pack into an open territory. Ahead of us was a deserted building. She finally stopped and looked around the surroundings once more before tapping on the door. The door swung open, revealing a guy in blonde. He hugged her tightly and kissed her. The smell of rogue. The rogue she was helping must be her mate. It only meant one thing. She was blinded by the mate bond and was helping him willingly. "Oh, Rachel." "Why?" I watched as she entered the hut with a smile lingering on her lips. Tears ran down my cheeks at the betrayal as I left the place, running back to the pack house. Rachel betrayed the pack for her rogue mate, betraying me in the process. I felt my head hit a chest. Groaning tiredly as I looked up, Nathan was staring at me with concern. "What happened, babe?" he asked, wiping away my tears. I wrapped my arms around him and cried in pain. He carried me into our room and set me down on the bed. He rocked me on his laps gently, soothing me with kisses. He kept quiet, letting me have my space while staying with me through the night. Knowing he was there made me at ease, but the betrayal was too much for me to handle. Chapter 26. Chapter 26. The whole night was spent crying in his arms, my bags swollen and puffy until I fell asleep from tiredness. When I woke up, he never left my side. His eyes were closed as he breathed heavily, leaning against my head. I smiled, my fingers trailing down his cheek to his jawline. He woke up from the slight movement, eyes wide awake and alert. He must have thought that someone was here to harm me. "It's all right, Nathan. It's just us." His eyes laid on me as he sighed in relief. "Babe, I was worried sick for the whole night." I smiled, leaning in to peck his lips. "I'm sorry. You know I won't ask you till you are ready to tell me, right?" I nodded with a smile. My eyes landed on the ceiling. It was something that I had to get it out of my chest. He had the rights to know as well. Rachel betrayed me. He stayed silent, letting me speak even though I knew that he must be in a rage right now. His face was contorted in rage. He must be piecing things together right now. However, he was controlling himself in front of me as he knew that what I needed now was his presence and his comfort. Another round of tears flowed again, my tears damp in the pillow. His eyes softened at the sight and caressed my face slowly, bringing me to face him as I continued with a lump in my throat. Her mate is a rogue. He is in the team of attackers, and they are in cahoots. His brows creased as he tried to process what I just said. Slowly, the dots were connecting. His knuckles turned white as he tried his hardest not to show his anger. I still can't accept the fact that she was a traitor all this while. I closed my eyes, crying silently as tears flowed down furiously. "Just cry it all out, babe." He wrapped his arms around me and caressed my hair softly as he comforted me in silence kinks. News traveled quickly. Rachel was now under in house arrest as she was restricted from going out. There were at least 3 different Nathan's men who watched her to ensure that nothing goes past their sight. Since I bore Nathan's mark, they automatically acknowledged me as their Luna. They allowed me to enter her house, letting us have time alone. I entered her room, bringing my eyes to face her the moment she looked up. She was shocked, before composing herself and cleared her throat. "What brings you here, Eve?" she asked, emptiness in her eyes. There was no guilt found in them, just an empty soul talking to me. She was not the same anymore. "Why did you do it? What do you mean?" she asked, acting as though she doesn't understand my question. "Stop lying through your own teeth. You should know what I'm talking about, Rachel." She closed her eyes and sighed. "This is my fate. You were given a choice, but you chose to walk down the path of a traitor," I said, a mix of anger and sadness building up. She opened her eyes, pitch black in anger. "I was never given a choice. The moment we met, I knew I was bound to walk down this path. It was either the pack or my mate." She spat defensively. "We are both different people, Eve. Your mate is the alpha. He has everything. Territory, wealth, family, me. My mate is a rogue and he has absolutely nothing after losing his parents in a fire years ago. All he has is me, and you are expecting me to give him up for the sake of the pack. So, what if he is your mate? What is the purpose of tearing down our pack and harming our people?" I questioned her, bringing up a Luna tone that I didn't know existed. She was a little intimidated, lowering her head down submissively. He said it is his last mission given by his alpha. Once they claim this territory, You will leave the rogue life and settle down with me at a place where no one knows us. You should know I will never let that happen. Right. I know you too well, Eve. That's why I have no choice but to do this. She snapped her fingers and I felt something hit my head. Everything in front of me went in circles. I couldn't piece out what happened, but all I know that I was slowly losing conscious. And the darkness embraced me. Chapter 27. My eyes fluttered open briefly as I felt an needle poked through my skin and a liquid entered my body. I groaned in pain as my body burned. Silver. For the next 10 minutes, I laid against the cold, hard ground as my body reacted to the silver, causing damage to my body. My wolf was not responding as the silver had blocked our connection temporarily. I looked up slowly. I couldn't figure out who had injected silver into my body. The place had strong rogue scent as I stared at the figures gathering at a table with a blurry vision. When my body couldn't take it anymore, I felt myself embracing darkness once more as Kanks. After the silver worn off, I felt myself able to control my body as I opened my eyes. The sunlight from the small window hit my face as I slowly sat up, exhausted. A figure walked towards me as she set a tray of food in front of me. I looked up and glared at Rachel with hatred. Why are you doing this? My words came out as a whisper as my strength betrayed me. I was too weak in this state. My question was ignored as she turned around and left. Make sure she doesn't have the chance to escape. She ordered some of the men who were gathered around the table, playing cards and drinking beer. The rogue smell lingered. All of them were the attackers. I stared at my surroundings. I was probably in the deserted building. Leaning against the wall, I moved slightly and found my hands and feet were tied with ropes. I sighed, closing my eyes briefly as I tried to connect with my wolf. However, Piper couldn't respond. There was no way I could contact my mate. I stared at the tray of food in front of me. I needed to survive and get out of here when there's a chance. I leaned forward and slowly grabbed the tray as I ate with my hands tied. I made sure to finish every single grain of rice and water before laying back down on the cold, hard ground. The silver injected had made me unconscious for a couple of days and my body is still exhausted. I kept my eyes shut and allowed myself to gain back my strength in the meantime, Skanks. By the time I woke up, I felt a needle poking through the same spot as another dose of silver was injected into my body. It was the second time being injected with silver, and when it took effect, it didn't hurt as much as the first. I cringed, clenching my fists as my body burned at the contact of silver. I didn't bother looking up since I knew it was Rachel anyways. I felt myself lying on the ground weakly as I closed my eyes and tried to fight back against the effect. Look at that sleeping beauty. One of them spoke aloud, grabbing a small knife used for cutting fruits. I opened my eyes quickly and watched as he stood up and slowly walked towards me. He squatted down, his dirty fingers touching my face. FCK off. I spat, my body still weak from the silver injected. He grabbed my throat and squeezed while I struggled to breathe under his strong grasp. Watch your mouth, little Luna. You will be a good doggy once I have my way with you. He smirked, the cooling blade touching my neck as he slowly traced it down to my blouse. He cut the first button off and moved on to the next button. Stop. I looked up, glaring at him. He chuckled darkly, dropping the knife to the ground as he tore my blouse open instead. Tears ran down my cheeks as I felt violated. I have yet to mate with my mate. Am I going to lose my virginity to this monster? I closed my eyes and cried silently, wishing that someone was here to save me. I can't fight on my own since I was too weak, but I won't be able to face my mate after being violated. What are you doing? Ace, Rachel screamed, throwing him a punch. What the FCK are you doing? UBTCH. He hit her, which made her fall to the ground. Stop fighting. Rachel's mate entered the scene as he rushed over to help his mate. Why did you hit my mate? He confronted, his face contorting in anger. It had turned into a commotion as they started fighting. As they fought, I thought about the knife that the jerk had dropped onto the ground. I grabbed it and quickly cut the rope tied on my hands and my feet. I looked towards my right and noticed a back door. I slowly stood up, forcing myself to move despite the silver making me weak. Limping on one foot, I continued moving without looking back. I managed to get out of the building and continued moving as far as I could go. I heard footsteps behind me as I expected that they had found out I had went missing and were catching up. My body burned as each seconds passed. Despite the pain, I still continued moving forward. A hand caught me as I felt myself being pulled into someone's arms. "Let go of me," I croaked out, struggling in his arms. Chapter 28 Eve. The familiar scent engulfed me as I sensed that it was Nathan. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I buried my head in his chest, still shocked from what has happened. I thought it was going to be the end of me once I get violated by the rogues. I thought I was never going to see him again. But he was here with me, right by my side. It then hit me I could never live without him. He has become a part of me now. Well. Isn't it the little Luna's mate, Alpha Nathan? A growl escaped from another Alpha's presence. I froze, looking up to see Nathan's gaze harden at his opponent. I do know of my little fame. But I had never heard of the Alpha who has been leading the group of rogues. Who are you? He cocked his head to one side, his jaws clenched in anger as he wrapped his arms around my waist tightly. Your worst nightmare. I could see a smirk coming from him as he gazed at my mate in a challenging stare. So your purpose of keeping my mate captive was to lure me out, isn't it? Nathan asked. I could hear a growl escape from his throat as his eyes hardened in rage. He mulled over his sentence with his fingers grazing across his jaws. Think deeper. I'm sure you are an Alpha for a reason. I noticed Nathan frozen in place upon his statement, quickly whipping his head back in the direction of the pack. Yes, danger is calling. By the time you go back, you will probably be seeing dead bodies. I gasped at his words, my eyes widened in alarm. What has he done to the pack members? Has he wiped out all of them? I looked behind him to see Rachel, her mate, and the bunch of rogues in the deserted building catching up. Nathan, I whispered, nudging him that we have to leave. For a moment, I felt my vision blurred as I leaned against him for support. The amount of silver was sinking in as I gasped, my head spinning. I see the amount of silver is about to slowly kill her, he said in confidence. Babe, are you okay? He asked in concern, looking down at me as I squinted my eyes, staring at his blurry face. Before I felt myself went out, I could feel his breath against me as he kept me in his arms. Stay with me, babe. He grunted in exasperation as we were stuck in the middle of their territory. Probably all the pack members were dead by now. We were perhaps alone now, and I was probably going to die with the amount of silver inside my body. I closed my eyes. Max, buddy, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wings spun like the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I thought I was going to die as I tried to keep myself awake in his arms. Before I knew it, darkness embraced me. I felt myself walking inside a dark room, trying to find my way out of here. I felt around for a while before finding myself staring into a pair of silver circles. It was glowing in front of me as I gasped in realization. Piper, is that you? Aren't we already dead? We are not dead. You sickening human. I jumped, startled. Alpha's tone coming from her was what I least expected as I continued to stare at her. What is going on, Piper? I asked, remembering back that I had taken in quite a lot of silver 2 days in a row. Didn't the silver kill me? No, you wouldn't be speaking to me right now if you were dead. She replied as if reading my thoughts. Those rogues had the cheek to play with us. If only I wasn't blocked by the silver, I would have already taken over and killed them. I froze at her words, Does that mean the silver has already slowly worn off? Neither is that. You've already absorbed so much silver that it could have killed you. But you survived, which means you are now immune to silver. What? Immune to silver how? Time to wake up now and save your mate. You are now stronger than before. Have faith in yourself. With her words, it gave me enough courage to pull myself together and wake up. I looked up to see a blurry figure hovering over me. My vision was restored and I looked up to see Rachel crying on her knees in front of me. I'm so sorry. Eve, I have done so much wrong. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I have no idea how to face you again in the afterlife. Her shoulders shook as she cried, tears falling down her cheeks. My heart softened a little, but I clenched my jaws at the thought of the amount of silver she had mercilessly injected into my body. Once a traitor, always a traitor. I hardened my heart and clenched my fists, aiming for her temple as she fell to the ground instantly upon my attack. I'm sorry, Rachel. I had to do this, otherwise we will have to fight each other while you are conscious. I sat up, my eyes glancing over as I spotted my mate fighting with 20 over rogues whom I had no idea appeared from where. I forced myself to stand up as I felt a surge of energy course deep through my veins. Strange. What had the silver done to me? I ran in the direction of the rogues as I began taking down a few of them. My punches sent in their way as I felt my fighting spirit coming back. Before Nathan came back from his alpha training, I had been practicing with punching bags. Now I am getting it all back. I began taking down the next one as I dodged his kick and knocked him off his feet. What is going on? The fight came to a cease as I looked up to see the rogue's alpha staring at me intensely. I cocked my head to the side with a challenging smile. Well, I will have to thank you for injecting so much silver. What do you mean? Shouldn't you supposed to be dead by now? He snarled in a rage as his plans has failed. Do not ever talk to my mate in this way. Jones. My mate growled ferociously, striding back to my side as he wrapped his arms around my waist protectively. He stared at me, lifting my head to face him. Babe, are you okay? What is going on? I nodded, smiling at him lovingly as I felt a wave of relief washed over me that I was still alive and kicking, standing by his side. I will explain later. Nathan, I whispered, leaning in to peck his lips. Look at that. What a beautiful couple. But I'm sure you guys will be reunited in the afterlife. Now, let's get down to it and finish this off. He growled, waving them over as they advanced towards us. I felt a punch incoming as I dodged it smoothly and yanked his arm, twisting it as he groaned before sending another punch, knocking him out. Nathan had just recovered from his attack and leaned against my back as we continued fighting with the rest. Another group of rogues began running in our direction as the remaining rogues ceased fighting, spotting smirks on their faces. Chapter 29. I looked towards Nathan worriedly. However, he did not falter from the strength of the opponent and stared into my eyes intensely. It felt like he had other plans in mind. He grabbed my hand and we began running in the direction of our pack. What was he thinking? Don't ask any questions. Just run with me. I could hear him through our mind link as he continued running, sending a nod in my way. I sealed my lips and ran as far as he took me. Chase after them. Make sure none of them makes it alive by dusk. I heard from a mile away as the alpha, whom I assumed is called Jones, began barking orders as he growled in annoyance. Very soon, we found ourselves being chased by almost 100 rogues who were determined to hunt us down and kill us alive. Thank goodness the amount of training has not failed me as I continued running, keeping up with my stamina. Should we shift? I blinked, sending him a message through the working mind link. No, don't. He replied quickly, glancing at me quickly before continuing running away from them. I could feel ourselves reaching our borders soon as we continued to run further away from them. Suddenly, he came to a stop and pulled me along with him. I stared at him, stunned. Why did he stop? Shouldn't we be running away from them? We turned around to face them as he pulled me behind his back protectively. The rogues were nearing as they surrounded us quickly. I stared at Nathan, unsure at this moment of how we are going to fend them off when it was just us alone. Jones appeared from nowhere with a smug smile on his face. Nowhere to run. He tottered, glaring at us with a snarl. He looked around the pack, chuckling darkly as no one was in sight. Finally, it is all going to end at this moment. He left, his eyes glowing in red. Before they made their advance, Nathan suddenly raised a hand and whistled loudly across the pack. His laughter died down as he stared at him in astonishment. He cocked an eyebrow with curiosity while the rest of the rogues were thrown into confusion at his abrupt whistle. Suddenly, the earth shook as the group of elites named Alpha came from all sides, surrounding the rogues in an instant. Our numbers has overpowered their strength as Jones was caught in his trap. Nathan has planned it all well enough. How did he started when it was cut off by Nathan? Ever heard of something called emergency fire drill? He finally spoke aloud, staring at him intensely. No, you did not. Jones growled in exasperation as he realized his master plans had ultimately failed. The pack members were not wiped out. Instead, they had went through the emergency fire drill which they had been practicing for this day. His own group of rogues must have either been killed or taken away as prisoner of war upon the secret attack. I slowly connected the dots and finally realized what he had invited grandmother to come back as the advisor of the pack. She held the ultimate trump card which Nathan needed in order to lure him into his trap. It was well played. However, the only factor was, which one of them was the mole who assisted Nathan? He couldn't have timed this so perfectly after all. So, Jones, would you like to surrender to us or continue the fight? He announced, shooting him a challenging glare as both strong alphas continued in a heated glaring contest. He snarled in anger. Do not forget that our strength has overpowered your army and you are stepping in my territory, so which means there is no way you can retreat without losing your life. Make your choice wisely, Jones. I do not give a FCK whether your strength has overpowered mine. We have been preparing for this day for very long and we will not surrender till the end. He growled, his alpha presence making everyone shiver. Very well. Nathan replied, his glare turning into a relaxed smirk. The fight began as our elite warriors began attacking the rogues. I pushed the first one out of the way, avoiding his punch as I knocked him out. Timur charged towards me in both different directions as I grabbed the arm of the first one, twisting it in the process before kicking the second one in the chest as I threw the first one towards him, sending them unconscious on the floor. I continued throwing punches and kicks as I fought my way through the sea of bodies. From the corner of my eyes, I noticed Jones throwing himself onto Nathan and began punching him in the face, my mate's blood smearing his knuckles. My claws appeared as I growled, giving quick kills onto any rogues who charged towards me and got in my way. I slowly strode my way towards Nathan and Jones as Nathan threw him over and quickly got to his feet. Another rogue swiftly took out a knife and began charging towards my mate. All I saw was red as I stopped the knife which missed his back. I sent a punch in his way and twisted his hand, the knife falling to the ground in the process as he groaned. I twisted his arm and clawed his chest, blood oozing out of his body. The smell of blood wafted to my nose as I looked down at the blood in my hands. Feeling disgusted, I clenched my jaws and ignored it. Swiftly, I took down those who tried to attack my mate while he got into a heated fight with Jones. Very soon, most of the rogues were done and it was left with the rogues Alpha and my mate who were in a heated fight. He managed to take down Jones. His claws appeared as he clawed my mate's arm. I gasped, feeling the pain as my fists clenched tightly. Nathan did not show any emotions as he growled, ripping his head off in an instant. With a victorious cry, he raised Jones's head as a sign that our pack has won. The rogues were confused now as their leader's head was right in front of them. They ceased fighting and were surrounded by our group of elites who were ready to take them down in an instant. I breathed heavily. Finally, it was over. From the corner of my eyes, I noticed Daninger Drogue slowly standing up from behind him, holding onto the knife. I quickly ran in his direction, yelling at him, "Nathan." In a swift moment, I hugged him as I took the stab for him. My eyes widened as I felt my breath stopped, my grip on my mate slowly loosening. The knife was taken out of my body as my eyes widened again. Blood escaped profusely from my back, wetting my shirt in the process. I felt blood coming out from my mouth as I tried my hardest to stay awake. He let go of the head as it rolled out of his fingertips, quickly clawing the rogue who had stabbed me, which sent him dead in seconds. I dropped to the ground with my fingers shaking in fear. I was actually afraid of death. I still had to live with my mate for the rest of my life, staying by his side and bear him pups. He still have yet to take my hands and travel around the world with me. "Babe." He engulfed me in his chest, hurriedly carrying me in his arms as he ran away from the scene. His legs carried us as quickly as he could, while all I did was to admire him in his arms. I took the time to remember all the features on his face, my fingers gripping onto his collar tightly. Before I went out, where I have no idea if I would be dead or survive, I want to be in his arms for as long as I can. "I love you, Nathan," I whispered, vomiting out more blood as tears slipped down my cheeks. Was this the end? Before I could say another word, I felt my grip loosen as I embraced the darkness before me. Chapter 30 Epilogue. Chapter 30 Epilogue. Nathan's POV. I felt her grip on me loosened as she went unconscious in my arms. My heart clenched tightly, tears spilling down my cheeks at the sight. I can't believe the silly girl had taken the stab for me. I ran as fast as I could, noticing the pack house was in sight. "Eric, I need you in my room right now." Carrying her up to my room, I laid her down on my bed, my hands shaking with fear of losing her. A man burst through the door as his nurses followed along with him. I turned around and gave him an intimidating growl. "Save her?" "Yes, Alpha." He nodded, quickly setting up the whole place as he began operating on my mate. I was sent outside the moment the operation started. "Evan, strengthen the security of the pack house. Make sure that the borders are guarded by our backup teams. Sean, make sure the rogues are held captive in the cells and burn those corpses lying on the ground." "Yes, Alpha." Both voices replied simultaneously at my command. I sighed, cutting off the link, turning my attention back to the situation at hand. I leaned against the wall, slowly sliding down as I breathed heavily. My eyes stared back at the door in front of me. Pain overwhelmed me. I can't believe she had taken the stab for me. It was the second time that I have failed to protect her. Tears rolled down my cheeks. The fear of losing her was eating me. I felt myself unable to hold back as I let the tears fall. A howl of pain escaped. I can't imagine my life without her. Evelyn. Before Barbada and his wife rushed up the stairs as they approached me. I stood up, my head hung low as I couldn't face them. I have failed to protect their daughter, failed my duty as her mate. "What happened to my daughter, Elsa?" he asked, worry written all over his face. Guilt washed over me as I wiped away my tears quickly. "She's been stabbed. Currently, Eric is operating on her." I muttered under my breath, emotions all lost as I waited for the scolding to come. However, there was none. James laid a hand on my shoulder, giving me a comforting squeeze. "Understand that you have tried your best to protect her. We don't blame you, Nathan." While, on the other hand, Sophia was shaking as tears fell down her cheeks freely. "Oh, my daughter. We shouldn't have went to Hawaii. Should have stayed and protected our beloved child." "Hush. Mark's by my fated mate. Light splashed around me and my wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing." "Don't be so hard on yourself. I am sure our strong girl will wake up soon." He turned to comfort his mate. After that, I blocked out all voices and kept my focus on the door as I waited impatiently for my mate. I was dying to know if she has gotten out of danger. I was dying to be by her side right now. The door suddenly opened as a nurse rushed out, carrying a huge tub of empty blood banks. Another nurse was in sight as she pushed the tray of fresh blood banks, exchanging them with the frantic nurse who rushed back into the room. Blood. My heart Spidey. My fated mate. White splashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. She was in need of blood transfusion, which meant that she was in critical danger. I blocked out all hearing and listened attentively to the conversation inside the room with my sensitive hearing. "We ran out of type of blood. Doctor, what about the hospital?" His voice boomed throughout the room. "We need to save some for the patients. There's not enough for the Luna." "Shit, we need someone to donate blood to her right now." He cursed aloud in the room. Panic rose in his voice as time was ticking. Either the blood has to be transferred, otherwise she would be in danger. Who, doctor? Without saying anything, I barged into the room, frightening the rest. "I will do it. My blood is type O. Stinks by the time I woke up. I felt my arms less swollen. My eyes landed on the needles pierced into my skin as I pulled it off, rushing out of the room as I headed to find my mate. Sounds escaped from the room next to mine as I quickly went in, only to find my mate laid on the bed, still sleeping. Attached on her hand was a needle similar to mine just now, connected to a packet of IV drip. Eric was by the bedside, checking up on her. Next to her was a heartbeat monitor which was currently beating normally. I hadn't noticed James in the room until a hand rested on my shoulder blade. "She's currently out of danger." He sighed in relief. A sad smile braced upon his lips. "Thank you for donating blood to my dear child. Otherwise, she wouldn't have made it. She's my mate. It's the only thing I can do for her." I sighed, approaching my mate as I sat down next to her, holding on to her small hand. "Alpha, the Luna is out of danger and currently in a coma. Right now, we can't promise you when she will wake up. It is up to her now," he informed. His voice carried empathy in them. "Thank you. Eric, you can leave." My eyes still focused on my mate while I heard words exchanged in the background before footsteps left the room. I was alone in the room with her right now. My fingers caressed her soft skin, pushing her hair out of her forehead. I trailed my thumb across her soft lips as I sighed. "Thank you for being alive. Babe, please wake up soon." All of a sudden, the heartbeat monitor began to beep an alarm as her heart beat quickly. The lines on the monitor were all over the place as she suddenly gasped, her eyes still tightly closed. Her body began to shake vigorously as she arched her back forward, sweat trickling down her forehead. "Babe," I growled in alarm, moving over to hug her instinctively. Eric suddenly barged into the room and went over to the bedside hurriedly. "Alpha, we need you to leave the room right now." With that said, I was dragged out of the room by a strong nurse and the door was slammed across my face. I paced up and down the hallway, my heart still beating quickly at the sight just now. What was happening to my mate? "Alpha, what happened?" James rushed towards me with a panic-stricken look across his face. I stopped pacing inside heavily, my mind flooded with possibilities of my mate's current condition. Her lines went haywire. She was shaking vigorously. Even when I hug her, it doesn't calm her down. I whispered, trying to piece things together. My eyes wide and as the next two words escaped from my lips. "Panic attack." "What do you mean my daughter is having a panic attack?" James questioned in disbelief, shaking my shoulders to face him. He was in a rage, his face contorted in anger. "I know that you know something. Nathan, spill," he ordered, not caring whether I am the alpha right now. The condition of his daughter mattered more to him at this moment. She was injected with silver. Heard from Rachel. The silver which entered her body was invented by that bastard. I trailed off, closing my eyes tightly. He gasped at my explanation. His grip on me loosened slowly. My baby girl. He cried aloud, while I blinked open my teary eyes to face her father. He was shaking with fear because of what Jones had injected into her body. Whatever it is, it must be something severe to make my mate suffer from a panic attack. Babe. I whimpered at the thought of her going through the side effects of the silver injected inside her body. If she hadn't died from the silver, does that mean it is going to kill her slowly? Thank you all so much for joining me on this dangerous werewolf journey. I hope you had your hearts pumping and your minds racing. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and come back for more exciting and dangerous tales. Until next time, stay safe and keep that adventurous spirit alive.